Micah Sheveloff. Speaking of piano player, keyboard player, singer, songwriter dudes from Boston, in Florida. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good, man. Good to see you. So I told you that this is when I introduce you as featured artist, let you give us a 30-second spiel about who you are and what you're doing with your music and stuff. And then we're going to take a listen to Favorite Son, and then we'll come back and get deeper with Dave.
I can't wait. So, I was raised in a classical music household, pretty militant. Wasn't allowed to listen to popular music at all.
Nice.
And I had, the classical piano, the theory, the ear training, all of that. And I, I had this very sheltered upbringing with, going to New York City, going to the ballet, going to all these different musical events. And then all of a sudden, through you grow up and through rebellion and everything else, I'm playing filthy, dirty clubs and buying fatties in the Combat Zone in Boston. And so the song Favorite Son is just kind of poking at the dichotomy between what my parents kind of thought I was going to be, this little kid wearing plaid pants, singing in a choir, and all of a sudden, just out of control and on big stages with crazy artists playing loud, noisy rock music in the 80s. So that's really what that song addresses. And I've got some beautiful footage, beautiful photos of the detritus that was the Combat Zone in Boston back in the 60s and 70s.
Sweet. So we're going to check it out. We'll be right back.
Yeah.
Faithful, he bows his head down low. A simple misunderstanding, a lifetime all alone. He pushes through a sandstorm on the battlefield in his head. And when the golden rays of sunlight paint him lying on his bed, he's strong like a secret agent man, a proper coat and tie. His little toy soldiers stare back at him as he fights the urge to cry. But somewhere back in Boston, where he first stood like a man, he offered up forgiveness, he tried to understand. Favorite son, where have you run to? Where will we find you now? Favorite son.
This song reminded me of my favorite Bruce Springsteen song called Secret Garden. It's from the Jerry Maguire soundtrack. Was that an influence?
It was not.
It wasn't.
It was not. As a matter of fact, real quick to address the influence, I walked into a rehearsal, vocal rehearsal, and one of the woman, Beth Patella, who sung harmonies for me at that time, she was also a musical therapist, and she had something called a meditation bowl, and you strike it with a mallet and kind of rub it. And she struck the meditation bowl, and it played in F sharp above middle C for you theory junkies. And the second it was this crazy ethereal sound, and the second I heard that, I sat down at the piano and out came the song. So.
Oh wow! So it was like that tone and that note just kind of like just alone it inspired you. That's cool.
Big time. That's a fact. That's how that happened.
That's awesome. Yeah, the other band I thought of was, Hozier, something more modern, but above everything in this tune, what really stood out was just, man, the production was really great, man. Like
thank
so
you.
smooth, the low end, it's like warm yet clean. And yeah, so maybe discuss like the mixing process and how involved you are.
Sure. So,
And
uh,
shout out, a producer if you want to.
yeah. So I was so fortunate when I moved to St. Petersburg, Florida. I went to a recording studio called Big Three, which had they had a label, they had Cheap Trick. And they were like, for what you're doing, you should call this guy. He works here sometimes, but he also, he works sometimes at another studio. And his name is Jason Pennock. And he had been in LA for over a decade doing label work. And he just wanted to raise his kids back here in St. Pete. And he did an unbelievable job. And Favorite Son's got a little Moog synth bass going on in there. The other aspect of all of this is that you mentioned before your audiophile ears. I've been doing the audiophile thing since I was, for a really long time. And so the whole mixing thing for me is a very, very big deal and an intensive process. Every session in the studio, he would email me a WAV file and I would go home. I would take that WAV file, burn it to a CD, and go to my big system, which is a big pair of teal floor standing speakers and a huge amplifier. And I would sit and listen to very carefully to what I had done every single session. So I'm very involved in the mixing process, and I've just been doing it a long time, and I want a certain sound.
Understood, man. It's like the one thing you didn't mention in your preamble to your song was that your dad was a music professor at Boston University. Yet
Yeah.
he was still very strict in the household. Like, did he not encourage like free thinking, creative, musical behavior and stuff like that? I'm interested to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, he's gone now, so he's not here to defend himself. But I'll tell you, he was, he did a lot of things right in terms of, when I went off the deep end and started playing rock and roll, he didn't freak out. He's like, just as long as you're earning, earning a living and not being a bum in the basement, whatever. But in the Partridge Family era, give or take,
Right.
he was just like, this is junk. You're not listening to that in the house. And so I would sneak like a vacuum tube table radio next to my bed when I would go to bed at night, and I would sit and listen to Boston WRKO. Top 40 radio, and I would, I'd hear song after song that was pretty much crap to me, and then I would hear something unbelievable like Laughter in the Rain by Neil Sedaka or one of the Beach Boys tracks, and it would just like it just Shannon by Henry Gross, it just changed my life. So like that first song, High Notes, on the new record Rockville, High Notes is about that experience of listening to these unbelievable hooks from 70s pop songs, which basically, converted me, and I decided at that point I was going to write songs, and no looking back from there.
That's cool, man. Yeah, the other little bit of rock history here I wanted to just touch on. So like you were in a band called The Dream with Gary Sharon for a year, which became Extreme. Like, is that what happened? Like what?
Oh yeah. So that story is they sold the name to a CBS for a TV show and became X Dream. That's where Extreme came from. So Extreme is really X Dream.
Interesting.
Gary is credited on Rockville because I made him listen to every track along the way, kind of. But yeah, he would have been Bob Dylan, I think. Like he's just a very thoughtful lyricist and an incredible talent, I think.
He would have been Bob Dylan?
In other words, he's Bob Dylan, I think a lot of Bob Dylan's success was because he coincided with that movement in time and the whole 60s free love.
Right.
Not to take anything away from Bob Dylan, but it is all When You Land, and Gary is very thoughtful in a similar way as a lyricist.
Yeah, and it just looks like, I'm just looking through your bio on your website, which is MicahSheveloff.com. Very simple, his name.com. Yeah, man, you played with a bunch of people over the years, but so you said you're before in the green room, you said, I guess you consider like your heyday was like basically the decade of the 80s?
No, that was my rock and roll heyday. Although 2003, 2008, I was in a band called the Voodoo Jets, which I founded with the drummer of a hair band called Steelheart. I don't know if you know who that is, John Fowler, and Francesco Perona was the bass player and the singer. And that got a lot of really favorable reviews, those two records. And unfortunately, John, the drummer, passed away. But so I've had a weird, and when John died, I really decided I wanted to go back to my roots, the classical piano roots, and write, Joni Mitchell, Barry Manilow, David Bearwald, complex pop songs with insane harmonies and unusual influences and thoughtful lyrics. And that's where I'm at now.
Well, man, you've done an amazing job. I mean, just with this one song alone, I haven't heard your entire catalog, but like I said, I'm big on high quality sound and mixing and just the whole spectrum of the production. And you definitely nailed it here, man.
Well, thank you. Interestingly enough, I've been asked by several fans for an LP, so that's on the way.
It is. Okay, cool. So the other last question is there's a tab on your website. It says live shows, and all it says on the page is keep an eye out for live streams. So what are you doing in terms of performing right now?
Yeah, so I am working that out. I'm just trying to find, with COVID and everything, and I live in a 1,700 square foot apartment, and so I have, and I have no gear. The only thing I own is a piano and a mic. So I'm just sorting out how I want to do that effectively. And honestly, I'm not an auto-tune guy. I want to just give people the real thing. So I'm just sorting out how to do that, but it will happen.
All right. Well, when it does, please message us and come back.
We'll do it. Honor to be here. Thank you all.